Nothing is off limits. And so we have to be cognizant of that. And don't be afraid of them. And you may have to confront somebody personally at some point.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special segment. We're going to be talking with a really good friend of mine, somebody if I, had to call somebody in the middle of the night because I needed help, if I was in the jungle, or if I just wanted to have an amazing conversation that was going to reorient how I think, that person would be Michael Yan. Michael is just, when he talks, you really ought to listen because he's always dialed in. He's at the front lines. He and Misako are figuring out what things are happening in the world their own way. They do it at the street level, out there where it's actually happening, at the front lines, and I always listen to Michael carefully. So, Michael, good to be talking with you again.
Hey, Chris, thanks. I was just in Singapore yesterday and just flew back up to Bangkok for meetings. I'm going to be meeting with the incredible Doug Casey, actually. He's flying into Thailand, and, the gold expert. Everybody knows Doug Casey. Before we just went down, Singapore, by the way, is becoming a gold hub. I mean, it already has been, but it's becoming even more so now. It's really positioning itself for that. But you know what? Before we went to Singapore, we were up here in Bangkok for other meetings, and look what book I found on the shelf. Yours.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on the top shelf. Misako and I, because we love books, and we went in there and we found these two side by side. Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's good right there.
If you're going to be beside a book, these two books together you got to read them. And Creature from Jekyll Island, for those who haven't read it, it's a great read. And now I'm reading the Tower of Basel, which James Bradley, the famous author of Flags of Our Fathers and some other books. I mean, he's a pretty incredible author. I was talking with him this morning. He read this book as well. We talk sometimes. And he said he read this book years ago, Creature from Jekyll Island. And so I was talking about another book with him this morning called The Tower of Basel, which is about the BIS, the Bank of International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland. And he said he just finished reading the Tower of Basel for the second time with a friend of his. They were studying it together. And he said, James Bradley, he's quite smart. He's like you. I mean, he's a high IQ man. I listened to him very closely. But he said he read that one, and he read the Tower of Basel, twice now. And he said 90% of what you need to know about the central banks is in those two books. That's what James Bradley told me this morning. I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on central banks, but that's what James said. So we were actually talking about gold and other issues, which I can talk about for a long time, but you probably want to say something.
Before you move on, I have to credit that book by G. Edward Griffin, who's a lovely man, by the way. He and his wife, Pat, love them both. He runs something called the Red Pill Expo. If people haven't seen that, it's well worth it. That book right there, I remember when I first read that. It was the summer of 2003. And I was reading out passages to my then partner at the time, right? You can't believe that, right? Michael, I'd gotten a PhD. I have an MBA by this point in time. They taught me how to compete for money, but G. Edwards shows you how the stadium is made, right? I was always taught to chase the ball. He says, oh, wait, here's how the stadium's made. And I couldn't believe it because he lays out that money is just printed out of thin air. And I was like, that can't be. So I set out proving that wrong because I had to. That's how I work. I like to get to no before I get to yes. I couldn't find, there was nothing wrong. So then when I was interviewing G. Edward, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, I said, Ed, I go to your Wikipedia page. It says conspiracy theorist 4 times in your intro on Wiki, right? Which is just Narrative Control Central. I said, I have to ask a question. They really hated your Creature from Jekyll Island. They call it a conspiracy theory book. It was in print in 1998 or maybe 96. It's in the 90s. I said, how many times have you been proven wrong? And he said, in all these years, Chris, I have received not a single qualified complaint about any piece of data that's in there. It's just history. It's all factual. It's all correct. And yet it's called conspiracy theory. Michael, why is that?
Well, Misako and I, we study information war, among other things, right? And as you know, we were all in the jungle together in the Darien Gap, and we're looking at food issues, and we're looking at the holistic war picture, not just weaponized migration, if you want to call it that. It's actually invasion, Another good book on that. By the way, weaponized migration. I mean, but the bottom line is we're looking at the big picture of the war, which, as you know, includes pharma, the jabs, includes the invasions, it includes food supply, which I successfully predicted Nord Stream was going to be interrupted. So when we talk about war, we're talking about many things: resources, we're talking about metals, we're talking about oil. Of course, you're always talking about energy and the prices of energy, obviously, and we're talking about fertilizer and food. Information war is the highest form of warfare, is information war. And so that's why we're here in Thailand. We're going to meet with Doug Casey. We're going to be talking about things like gold. We're going to be talking about things like routes with Doug and some other very serious people, some of whose names you'll know. And we're just going to have a private meeting, and we're going to go for a couple of weeks, actually. And actually, I hope that you can come over. But let me talk about gold and brainwashing and information war. I was talking about that with James Bradley this morning. I said, we're trying to figure out, when did they start not telling Japanese and Americans to save gold, and that it's virtuous to save fiat, which is how they steal from us, obviously. They evaporate our money every day with fiat, right? And go ahead, sir.
I'm going to guess it was around August 15th, 1971.
Actually, I was talking with James, and I said, James, was it in the 1930s or was it in the 1970s? He's like, if you look at MBA textbooks after because I was thinking that too. It was either 1970s or 1930s for Americans, right?
Yeah.
And he said, if you look at MBA textbooks after 1973, he said, none of them mention gold. That's what he told me this morning. And that's what James Bradley, the author, told me. Yeah, he's like, after 1973, none of the MBA, not that I audited all those, that's what James told me this morning. And that dude's really sharp. I don't know if you know James, but there's a reason why I call him up early in the morning. It was like 6:30 where I called him up at. So and so interestingly, Japanese as well. If you talk with Japanese about gold, they're just like, gold, why would anybody save gold? Now, if you talk with Thais, I'm in Thailand now. If you talk with Indians, if you talk with Vietnamese or Chinese, every one of them that I ask, because I ask so many people over here from so many cultures, do you buy gold? And all of them say they buy gold. I've read, I don't know if it's true, that 80% of Thai savings is actually in gold, right? I don't know if that's true. I have no way of auditing it. But if you go to the gold stores in Thailand, they're full. I mean, always full. I mean, because gold is literally, it's not as commonly used, of course, as the actual baht, the Thai baht, but these are Thai bahts. Like that's 1,000 Thai baht. It's not, obviously, this is fiat, but it is so commonly used that everybody saves it. And everybody buys a little bit of gold here. And so because they know how important, culturally, it's still part of their firmware. But the Japanese and Americans, and actually we had the Dutch scientist over with us recently, Willem Engel, Willem. And Willem's brilliant. Willem well. I mean, I've been with him in Netherlands quite a few times. We were just with him in Thailand a few weeks ago, interviewing a Thai doctor, Adapon, who's an expert on these jab issues. And we started talking about gold because I wanted to talk about the Dutch ideas of gold versus Thai versus American versus Japanese, because Masako was at the table as well. And Willem Engel, as brilliant as he was like, Americans or Japanese. Of course, he knows what gold is, but he doesn't know how important it is to save it, right? Because we've all been brainwashed, like the jab or whatever, to be, if you're saving any gold, you're hoarding. But if you're saving currency, fiat, you're saving and you're virtuous. This is how they steal from us, right? It's just perfect.
Yeah, mind control. So the Thai baht is 3 cents to the dollar. I had to look that up, roughly. So 1,000 of those would be 1,000 times 3 cents. So that would be $30 maybe. Ish.
Yeah, that'd be about 30. Let's talk about the Thai baht. So this is the Thai baht, right? Now, Thailand is a big gold culture, right? They got some serious gold stores here. This is also a Thai baht, but this is a baht coin. Baht is a measurement in Thai. Weights and measures. It's about 15 point 124 grams or something. I'm sorry. Oh, a little bit over 15 grams. So this is 96.5% gold, right? And whereas this Canadian is what, 999, right? Or 9999.
Yep.
4 nines or 3 nines.
4 nines if it's Canadian,
So,
yeah.
yeah, this is a Canadian maple, right? And so I just picked that up in Singapore, right? And but these Thai bot are 96.5. So interestingly, here in Thailand, the Thais have almost a semi-hermetically sealed system because they weigh everything in baht, right? And so like this is 10 baht of gold, right? So this is about 4.88 ounces of gold at 96.5%. So this is a pretty heavy piece of gold, right? And but interestingly, so the baht currency is kind of semi-pegged to the gold. It's not actually, but it's exchangeable immediately. Like it's fast. Like if you got this coin or you got this this is called a CC. It's actually Chinese. But if you got this 1 baht coin, this is about half an ounce, right? A little bit less than half an ounce. I can take this and change that into cash absolutely instantly. Faster than going into a bank. That fast. And a lot of Thai people, they will carry just like a necklace or something. I was talking to my Thai businesswoman friend Soy, and she said, and we were talking about this a few weeks ago. She said, "Oh yeah, one time when I was young, like a teenager, young 20s or something, she flew up to Chiang Mai, and being young, she ran out of money, and she always wore a ring." And that ring was for just that occasion. She went, sold the ring, and flew back to Bangkok, right? And and that's it. She's not wearing the ring for anything other than that's your emergency gold. Period. Full stop. Right? And so the Thais are really good at that. Vietnamese are very good at it. Chinese are very good at it. And I think our relatives used to be very good at it, our great-grandparents, and then it got brainwashed out of us. And the same with the Japanese. We've been looking more into the history of Japanese and their relationship with gold and silver, and they clearly used to have a relationship with it, which is now completely broken. When we were in Okinawa, maybe last month, I was with Misako, and she went in to buy, actually, gold Canadian maple, and she bought it through a Japanese currency store, which you have to present your ID and do all this paperwork and pay capital gains if you make any money. I mean, it's completely controlled in Japan, right? This is a controlled item in Japan, right? And she bought one of these. I bought this one in Singapore because I'm starting to take them with me because I'm having problems with banking all the time now, and so this is my emergency, right? And not just as an investment, but literally an emergency. James Bradley told me he used to carry a belt of gold. He doesn't do it anymore because he gets in trouble sometimes because now people are cracking down on carrying gold. But let's talk about Thai baht for a minute. They've got their own weights and measures, right? So it's 96.5%, and this is like 15.124, something like that, grams, or anyway, a little bit over 15 grams, a little bit less than a half ounce, right? And so if you bring this into Thailand, this Canadian maple, yes, you can sell it, but it doesn't. You're gonna take a haircut selling it here, right? Because they want Thai gold, and you can sell this instantly and buy it instantly, and you don't have to show any ID. It's literally like currency. But when you go to Singapore, I ask, will you take Singapore gold? Everybody, will you take Thai gold? Everybody's like, nope, no Thai gold. So in other words, interestingly, when I talk with people here, of course they would take Thai gold if you offered them a great price on it. But it makes the Thai, from what I'm told down here, it makes their baht. It's one of the things that adds a little bit of stability to the baht. It's not just that, but there's other things, right? But this real close, it's not pegged to the gold, but it's got a close relationship with it.
So I had to look it up. A Thai baht in gold is 15.244 grams, but that's at 0.95965 purity. So it actually has 14.71 grams of pure gold in it.
Yeah, that's right. It's less.
473 trillion ounces. So just under a half ounce of pure gold in a baht. I don't know why everybody comes up with their own weights, measures, and purities, but that's how it is. I love weights and measures.
Yeah. Oh, me too, man. It's 96.5%. But weights and measures is in our Constitution, right? Because our forefathers were smart enough to realize.
Which has followed, right? Because so a dollar is supposed to be 371.25 grains of silver, and then they pegged gold to silver in a certain ratio, but it was around silver. Silver is the only true money in the Constitution.
But when I was in Afghanistan, I wrote about weights and measures because I travel around the world, and a lot of countries I go to, they still use their own weights and measures, right? And so they will. I mean, like you can have like 20 different weights and measures in like areas of land, links, weights of corn or whatever. And one of the weights and measures for opium actually in Afghanistan is AK-47 bullet. AA batteries, AAA batteries, which, the AA's and AAA's, they don't all weigh the same because they don't have any different, like the Pashtun people from one tribe and the Uzbek people and the Tajik people and the Hazar people and all these different people. They have their different weights and measures. And, we can take for granted that we have our crazy system that we use versus the metric, but they are standardized, right? But in much of the world, weights and measures are measured in things like the distance that you can hear your cow moo. I think that's called a co, right? In old, how far away. So it's actually a subjective measure in some places. You know what I mean?
This is really important because, in the Bible, it talks about dishonest weights and measures as being basically a sin, right? So without a standard weight and measure, some way for us to communicate at a distance and to be able to have trust, that it makes life so much easier. There is nothing more dishonest than fiat money because it has no weight, has no measure. It's constantly eroding. You don't even know what it's going to be worth next week, right? Let alone next year. Money, right? So it's fundamentally dishonest. And I was listening to somebody give this talk, Michael, and they were like, if we did this and tweaked that and elected this person in and put these tax measures in, I was like, if you have a dishonest, fraudulent money system, I don't care how many rules you put on top of it, you're going to end up with corruption, dishonesty, and fraud at the back end of that because we're humans. That you can't have honest systems on top of a corrupt money system. I think that's one of the core problems we're facing right now. It's why I want to tell people about gold. I want to tell people about this thing called the Great Taking, which is a legal set of machinery that's designed to separate you little piece by little piece from your assets and ownership and control until someday they just cut the cord and you don't own anything, right?
Yeah.
This is where we are. It's a highly corrupt system. So I love your historical perspective and all the reading you're doing. I can't find a stable period of human history when we had dishonest money like they had when Rome collapsed. It collapsed because the denarius went from X grams of silver to 0% silver, right? It became totally dishonest. And you got Caligula and Nero and all the rest, and then it fell apart. I don't think you can have a stable society with dishonest money. I just don't.
Fiat money always blows away. It evaporates, right? I mean, this obviously will die. That's the life cycle. Another thing I've seen used as weights and measures is just these bottles of water. Like you'll come into a village and they'll have these various bottles of water and that's how they'll, like, let's go back to Afghanistan, like opium, right? So often they would use for small amounts of opium where people are probably using it, they will use like literally an AK-47 bullet for the weight, which obviously some people could tamper with that as well. But, and they'll use a AA or a AAA battery. And again, different, like alkaline battery might have a different weight than another battery. But the bottom line is our weights and measures, again, are part of our Constitution because it's so important. And now, of course, these have no weight and no measure, and they're going to die. Bottom line, good. Right? And but here, these things, like this is a 10 baht, right? So that's 10 baht. So that's like 4.88, I think, something like that, ounces, right? And the one that's half the size, the 5 baht and the 2.5 baht, that's the sizes that they come in. Those are obviously, these are for savings, obviously. But, again, if you want to save Thai baht, if you want to save Thai gold, it's so easy to pick up here. But it's only going to be really highly usable in Thailand. But in Thailand, it's almost like cash, except that no inflation. It's right, you know.
Right. So, well, let's talk about this. So I'm going to put a picture up. This is gold prices here, Michael. Can let me see. Can you see my crosshair on there? Yep.
Yes, sir.
Well, it was just sort of floating along all through 2021, wobbling down. 2022, hardly doing anything. But suddenly something started to happen here, and off it ran, right? And so I want to talk about what happened here. This is February of 2022. That's when the United States weaponized the dollar, told Russia that sovereign reserves were not sovereign. That's when we saw a lot of countries, the so-called BRICS, which would be Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus like 100 others now, suddenly got religion and said, you know what, I think we'd like to get away from the dollar. And gold has been making an all-time new high, just powering higher and higher. And Michael, I've been tracking gold. I've been a gold bug since 2001. This is the quietest bull market ever. CNBC isn't talking about it. Nobody's talking about it here in the West, right? It's not like...
Not in the West. The Indians are.
Yeah, Orlando, I want to hear about that, because here in the U.S., if NVIDIA makes a new high, it's on every major... It's in the Wall Street Journal, CNBC, MSNBC. It's everywhere, right? They just can't push you into AI fast enough. Gold make new highs? It's just crickets. This is the quietest in the West bull market I've ever seen. So obviously somebody's buying. I'm hoping you can shed some light on that for us.
Yeah, I mean, the central banks, the BIS, right? The Bank of International Settlements apparently is buying a lot. China and maybe Saudis buying a lot secretly, allegedly. I don't know. You know, and by the way, what happened to Argentina's gold? How did that suddenly vanish from Argentina over to
it's got
wherever it went to?
Sent away for Babylon. I don't understand that one. That was a south note for me.
A lot of gold's obviously moving around at this point. And obviously because this is actually real money. This is actual money. Whereas this is not actual money. These are just IOUs. This is going to go away. And so we're down to it. I mean, if you talk about this all the time. If you don't have anything to trade, you're going to be broke.
Well, I do have a lot of, my hope in this. So I like to end with a little bit of hope is watching how many people are waking up. And it's just a groundswell right now. And this is a good thing because I honestly think, the more I read the Bible, the first time I read the Bible, Michael, I'm 61 years old, right? So I just started reading it. And it's a page turner, and I'm yelling out to Evie, who says hello.
Hey, Evie.
Evie, humans have done this before.
Exactly.
This same mistake over and over again. And it's this hubris. It's this idea that we don't need God and his crazy restrictions on life. We can do whatever we want. And then, wrath happens, right? And so I see us like we're making a lot of
changers and all that stuff.
Yeah. We don't need to let the fields lie fallow. We're smarter than that. We have drones now that tell us where to apply our chemicals, right? So
how about cutting the trees down? The Israelis are cutting the trees down now. That's right out of the Bible. Don't do it. Al was talking about earlier today. He's Jewish. He's like, it's in the Talmud. You're not to cut down trees.
Don't do that. That's just not a good idea. That we're smarter than that now. We got it, right? So as I look forward to that, I mean, people are actually tired of that old life. And so the sin I see that our culture is built around sin. Sin with the original term meaning to miss the mark. So what's the mark? Well, the mark isn't to come here and earn money and accumulate a lot of stuff. As you mentioned, maybe we're even happier without all this stuff. The sin is to miss your mark, and your mark is to come here and find out why you're here. Your soul is on a journey. You have some gifts. You're here, ultimately, the Bible's clear on this, to share them freely with people, right? Well, if you're watching porn and smoking dope and worried about the fact that your paycheck doesn't make it and, there's never enough, even the billionaires are all scared they don't have enough. They need more billions for some reason. If you haven't unlocked the key to putting all that noise aside so you can grow into who you are, it's a sin, right? So my whole culture is organized around sin. We're 5 minutes from alcohol anywhere I land in this country. Drop me anywhere, and in 5 minutes I'll find alcohol, right? It's just how it is. But if people want to engage in real life affirming practices and stuff, you kind of have to go to a special fringe experience with some other crazy people and have a week in the woods without your cell phone, pay a lot of money, right? It's they make it hard to engage with your own life again. So that's what I see happening. It's like it's right in the Bible. The sin is that you're going to engage in gluttony, greed, pride, all those things, right? And our whole culture is organized around those things, and we reward those, and we really like people who display them. You got your P. Diddy's, and we elevate that. But quietly over here, Michael, there's a group of people who are going, hold up. I think we can do better, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And so I see that starting to be resurge at this point, and that's very hopeful to me.
Let's say spiritual nutrition is important.
Yes.
Misako and I, we've gotten to the point where actually we pray before every meal. We make sure we always, because for some reason it makes the food taste better. I don't know why. Maybe it's because when you're giving thanks for what.
Yeah, that spiritual nutrition. People are starting to sprinkle that back in their lives and bring it back in because it's important. It's important.
It is.
Big parts of life.
What's that? Which one?
Spiritual nutrition, right? And then you got your actual physical health and all of that, right? Everything you got to do, and then there's your mental, your learning, your wisdom, growing towards wisdom, right? So those three big parts: the mind, body, and spirit, as it were.
Yeah, you'll never attain wisdom if you haven't worked on your spiritual side.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the hope I have right now. Is more people are waking up fast, and that's a good thing, and that scares them, and then that scares me because these people, the cluster B narcissist types, Machiavellian, sociopath, narcissist, they will do anything to avoid losing their grip on power.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I mean anything.
Nothing is off limits. Yep. That's true. And so we have to be cognizant of that, and don't be afraid of them. And you may have to confront somebody personally at some point.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a real pleasure. And
thank you, Doctor.
I'm jealous of your 10-bot boat you got there. It looks like a boat from here. I don't know what you call that thing.
It's called a CC.
Yeah. All right.
I'll be talking with you soon. Bye, Evie, as well.